All right, before the break, we detailed much of the deep state's dislike of President Trump. And over the weekend, former CIA Director John Brennan directed this revealing tweet at the president. When the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. You may scapegoat Andy McCabe, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you. What bad writing. Is the FBI colluding with the intel community to destroy the Trump presidency? Well, let's put that to the test. Retired FBI Assistant Director Chris Swecker is with us, and retired FBI Special Agent Terry Lane, and Fox News contributor and Washington Examiner reporter Byron York. Gentlemen, we have so much to get through. We gotta be pithy about this. I want to play for you right off the bat this commentary, this testimony by Brennan on May 23rd of last year at the House Intel Committee. Let's watch.
Have you ever requested that a U.S. person's name be unmasked?
Yes, I have.
Are you aware of any requests within the community that were denied?
I do not. I didn't have visibility into requests that were being made across the government, so I don't recall one that I was denied.
Okay, so Chris, basically, if you ask for someone to be unmasked, it's going to get unmasked. I mean, he kind of said, I do not, well, I don't know the whole range of. What do you make of that in light of what we know now? His tweet, the focus on getting Trump, he's a demagogue. That's a former FBI director, a CIA director, excuse me.
CIA director. Well, clearly he was still working for President Obama while he was working for President Trump. And I have never seen so much politicization at the tops of these two agencies, the FBI and the CIA. It's something that I hate to concede, I hate to admit, but under Director Comey, clearly there was an agenda to kill the Clinton email investigation and not even let the campaign finance or the foundation investigation continue or be conducted in a way that's designed to get to the truth of the matter. So you got two things going on there. I also think, however, Laura, that the special counsel needs to exist, and we need to get to the bottom of some other things as well.
Byron, John Brennan, I think, showed in his tweet this weekend just how much animosity has built up, like Chuck Schumer warned, against the president. Samantha Powers also has had a response. Not a good idea to piss off John Brennan. That's lovely language coming from Samantha Powers.
To say they got off on a bad foot is just an incredible understatement. Go back to the transition. Donald Trump has been elected. The intelligence chiefs are working on their report about Russian meddling. They finish it in January of 2017. They brief President Obama on it. And they also brief President Obama about the dossier and the salacious details in the dossier. So the next day, January 6th, they go up to Trump Tower. Four of them are in there, including John Brennan and James Comey, and they talk to him about the report on Russian interference. And then, by prearrangement, three of them leave, leaving Comey alone with the president-elect, who tells him about the dossier.
But Comey knows the dossier is paid for, does he not at that point, by Fusion GPS? But Fusion GPS gets paid for by?
We think by the Hillary Clinton campaign. And we think that he...
Does he tell the president that?
Not to our knowledge, but we really only know what Comey has said. But think of this from the president-elect's point of view. First face-to-face meeting with the FBI, and they tell him, by the way, we know about you and those hookers in Moscow. So that is getting off on a really
nasty,
bad
meant to
foot.
rattle the president, meant to, we're on to you. We don't know.
How else could he think that?
Joe DeGeneva was on radio today with me, Terry. And he's coming in as a new lawyer on the Trump team. He's a longtime contributor to this show and others on Fox. And this is what he said. Let's listen.
I really believe that Brennan and Clapper were the people who are most responsible for all of the violations of law that occurred during the 2016 campaign that involved not only the unmasking, but the illegal disclosures and other things. So in many ways, this tweet by Brennan was a blessing in disguise.
Terry, for that, he's being called, again, a conspiracy theorist. Donald Trump's hiring a conspiracy theorist for one of his, on his legal team and so forth. Your reaction?
Well, Laura, I'll tell you, like we say in Texas, Brennan is an idiot. He has no idea how the FBI operates. His agency operates completely different. Although they take an oath to the Constitution, they don't follow the Constitution as we have to. The FBI has to follow the Constitution to the letter. You know, whenever we prosecute somebody, whenever we investigate someone, we have to follow all the rules of evidence, all the criminal procedures. The CIA doesn't do that. So I'm not surprised that Brennan comes up with this idiotic statement that he makes because, again, his agency can operate on conjecture. His agency doesn't have to follow the truth. Their stock and trade is actually the untruths. So, you know, I don't know that there's a deep state, but if there is, I am absolutely certain Brennan's part of that deep state.
Chris, I want to go back to you because you wrote a piece for Fox News about how truth-telling by the FBI, going back to McCabe's firing here, in the general sense of lawlessness, conflicts of interest, unethical behavior, the telling of the truth is so critical for the FBI. Why? And that's a sacrosanct rule that must be followed, and if it's not, breaks down the trust. Tell us.
Well, certainly fidelity, bravery, integrity is the FBI's motto. And it's integrity because they have to testify about things that they do. They have people's life, liberty, and property in their hands. They can put their thumb on the scale of an investigation and deprive someone of liberty in a second. So they have to tell the truth, and they can't nuance the truth, and they can't spin it. They have to tell all, you know, the whole story, the way it comes out factually. So, and Andy McCabe knew that. His own OPR reported directly to him. Candace Will, the assistant director of OPR, was one of his direct reports. She basically fired her own boss because the FBI was cleaning its own house here.
And Byron, I want to go back to you. Michael Bromwich, who's a lawyer for McCabe, tweeted out, "We will not be responding to each childish, defamatory, disgusting, and false tweet by the president. The whole truth will come out in due course, but the tweets confirm that he has corrupted the entire process that led to Mr. McCabe's termination, has rendered it illegitimate. What can we expect?"
I think we need to look at people who know something about this case. And even Adam Schiff, the Democrat on the House Intel Committee who never misses an opportunity to criticize President Trump, has said, well, perhaps this firing was proper, and then he criticized the way in which it was done. But people who know about this are being careful not to denounce this as an illegitimate sort of act. And we do know that the nonpartisan parts of the FBI, Office of Professional Responsibility, and the Inspector General were behind this. Last thing, McCabe had a media tour ready before this. He had done several interviews with media people. And the one thing he did not talk about was the details of what led to his firing.
Interesting. And we'll keep following this all show long. We're out of time, unfortunately. We'll have you back. This is going to be going on all week, next week as well.